We are blessed to be a blessing. You are tuned in to WCHB AM 1340, a Radio 1 production, and welcome to Kingdom Connections. Yes, welcome to another show. Thank you for tuning in on this Saturday. We are so excited that you have decided to join us for another moment of inspiration and information. And today is all about financial revelations, that is. And I am your host, Reverend Erica. I bring you greetings from the Mount Pleasant Missionary Baptist Church, where we serve with our dynamic pastor, Reverend Dr. James Minnick, and all the Mount Pleasant family. Shout out to you today. We're so glad that you're here because we have a special show where, Financial Revelations is talking all about teaching you how to learning how to manage money, financial resources, wealth, God's way. You know that the Word of God has a financial plan for us. God has a plan. He has a financial plan for us. And if we learn those promises and those principles and learn how to adopt them, I guarantee you that you're going to realize financial abundance in your life. So today's show is entitled Closing the Racial Wealth Gap. And that is something that is so timely for today. But I'm so excited because we have a special guest who has joined us all the way from Wisconsin, Mr. Chuck Self. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Reverend Erica. It's a pleasure to be on the show and to be able to inform your listeners.
Yes. Oh, yeah, they're going to get some really great information today. Because I met you about a year ago. I had an opportunity to sit and listen to your presentation. And what's so interesting, this was at the African American, the Financial Advisors, the Quad A conference last year. And we got to experience the racial injustice experiment of none other than Jane Elliott. She was our keynote presenter for that evening, and your presentation came right after, right?
Yes. She's a hard act to follow, but I was talking about something a little different, and we're going to talk about that this afternoon.
Yeah, I thought the information that you brought actually put it into numbers. We were able to see the impact of, she showed the systemic, she showed the undertones and how we don't even realize. But when your presentation went up, we actually got to see the financial impact that has had in our lives, in the Black community for so long. So thank you so much for, I reached out to you. I said, I have to get my hands on that information because everyone needs to see this. Yeah. We need to see not why is there such disparities from one community to the next. I mean, it can be just a border from one city to the next. And there's such a disparity in the amount of wealth that we are able to maintain in our community.
Yes, and it's amazing because we live in a time where there's been tremendous amount of research that has come about on this closing the racial wealth gap question. And what I'm going to provide today is the latest research. Everything is within the last few years, and so we have you will have the best research that's available to really inform you and then hopefully propel you to do things to help close it.
All right. Well, I know that you were chosen as one of our presenters for the conference. How about you tell us a little bit about your background and the expertise that you bring to the table?
Well, thank you, Reverend Erica. I'm originally from St. Paul, Minnesota, so I'm a northerner like all of you, and my actual master's degree is in statistics. So you'll see why you'll see statistics in today's in today's presentation. But I spent almost the last 40 years in the investment management business in a number of organizations in a number of ways. But right now, I'm focused on bringing the best asset allocations I can to financial advisors so that they could bring it to their clients.
Yes.
And so I think about these big issues all the time, and the one on racial wealth gap is just kind of one of those things that I'm very curious about, and I'm very excited to have the research and present it today.
Yeah, me too, because it's really great to be able to see it and know how to use that information so that we can make some changes. Right now, in our nation, in our country, in our lives, this is a really peculiar time. It's a really peculiar time. It's one of us. It's a season where we must do some things correctly, significantly. We must make some significant impact, not only in our community, but in our homes. We must have constant conversations, and we need to know what we're talking about. So talk to us about this. What is the significance of this racial wealth gap? What does it look like, and what do we need to do?
Okay, let me show the presentation I have. That we're not going to go through it completely, but this way, at least then you can see where things, where the situation is and what we could do to have to make a difference. So this chart shows the gap between the median white family and the median Black and Hispanic families. You could see in 2016 that the middle white family on average has $175,000 of wealth. Now, we're not talking about income here. We're talking about value that they have in wealth. And it's $175,000, whereas for the Black community, it's about $15,000.
Right.
So there's this tremendous difference between it's over 10 times the difference between the white and the Black. And as you can see, as time has gone on, that gap has widened. The white community has been able to get wealthier, whereas we have pretty much stayed the same in the Black and Hispanic communities.
So this slide that we're looking at, even for our listeners who are listening on the radio, this is showing a time span from 1992 all the way to 2016. And the wealth gap has gotten wider, hasn't, even during the recession, it still continued to get wider.
Right. And so there's no doubt that these facts are hard and solid, that there is a gap. And there's really 4 reasons that this gap has come about, according to a consulting firm called McKinsey and Company. First is that is the community context, the things that happens in Black communities versus other communities. In Black communities, your neighbors on average earn about $42,000 a year, whereas in white communities, they earn $52,000 a year. And the reason why that's important is that, as my parents always say, often it's not what you know, but who you know. And if the people in your community are wealthier and they have higher incomes, it's likely that you're going to have opportunities than if they don't. And in the white communities, that's the way it is. They have higher incomes, they have higher wealth, and thus they have the ability to ability to network into higher wealth as time goes on, much more than in Black communities.
So Chuck, would you say that this also directly correlates to the housing market and the money that is the property taxes that are collected that go to fund the education in our community? So our community definitely creates that framework for our economic and social condition.
Yeah, and that's right. And because of the historical redlining and blockbusting and other other things that have been done in our communities, there's just not the demand for the housing in our community, and so we can't build wealth with housing. And if I can't build wealth in housing, my next door neighbor can't either. So none of us have access to the wealth that is necessary in order to be able to make progress.
Wow.
And so the second thing is family wealth. As you can imagine, a lot of wealth is generated is passed on from generation to generation. And this top number blows my mind. And for the radio audience, it tells you the share of population between the ages of 30 and 59 that have received any inheritance. And it turns out that the white population, a little over a quarter, 26%, have received inheritance, whereas blacks, it's only 8%. That's less than 1 out of every 12 black person. And so right off the bat, because of the wealth in the white family, there are inheritances that are passed down that are not passed down in black families. And then even worse, once black people get inheritances, on average, the inheritance is $83,000, but for white people, it's almost 3 times as large at $236,000. So this is a double whammy. We don't have inheritances. Often the wealth that a family has, it's just enough to bury people and have funerals. But even when we are able to get inheritances, they're significantly lower than white families.
So are you going to talk about why that is?
Yes, yeah. I'll talk about why that is, and
want to make sure we address,
yeah.
What's charging this huge significant difference between that 26% of white families receiving an inheritance versus blacks at 8%. That's a big difference.
Right. And to give you a preview, when we were freed from the chattels of slavery, we were just freed. Nothing was given to us. There were promises made to us, to our ancestors, but nothing was given. And in fact, over time, more was taken away. Whereas with white families, they were able to settle the Midwest and West, got land cheap. They were able to get out here cheap if they came from the East or from another country. They got the benefit from land grant universities that helped farmers, like Michigan State, there in Michigan, and then there were county agents that helped them farm. So there's been this major government largesse that the white population had when they had nothing, whereas we did not receive much of anything. But we'll talk more about that later. In this chart, it shows that for professionals, on average, there's about 67% of professionals are white men and women versus 33% of men of color at the entry level. So at the very beginning, we are well represented in entry-level professionals. But by the time you get to the C-suite, 68% are white men and 19% are white women, meaning that
the audience, C-suite professionals are
the people at titles that start with C: Chief Executive Officer, Chief Operating Officer, Chief Financial Officer. And so yes, thank you for helping me clarify that. So they're the very top of the ladder, so to speak, in corporate America. And again, 68%, 2/3 of those positions are held by white males, and only 13% are held by men or women of color. So if you don't have the income to be able to generate wealth because you don't have the top positions, then it's hard for our community to create and maintain wealth.
All right. So these positions, I don't think that, for our listening audience, that from our experience and from our everyday life, we know that this is what we have experienced, what we know to be true from
Right.
our day to day. And so, but we've always been told that if you get a good education, then you're able to get a good job and have a good career. Shouldn't that directly correlate to some of these numbers that we're seeing here?
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's not the case, and I'll be talking about that a little later.
Okay.
And I want to make sure that we also understand the burdens that we have as a race when it comes to housing. Housing is usually your number one expense, and if your housing expense is too high, you're not going to be able to save. It's just a problem that we have. This chart shows for the people on the Facebook page what percentage in each race of the people spend more than half of their income in housing. And the numbers are like this. For white people owning, only 12% spend more than half of their income in housing.
Mm-hmm.
For Black people, it's over a quarter, over 25%. And it's even worse when you come to renters. White renters spend less than 20% on housing, whereas almost a third, 34%, of Black families spend more than 50% on housing. If you're spending more than 50% on housing, given all your other costs, you can't save. You don't have money to save.
Yeah.
And so,
This is significant because when we're doing, as a financial planner, as an advisor, and I'm telling clients, 30%, less than 35% of your income should be spent on housing, but many times that's not doable.
yeah, it's just not possible.
When insurance is so high, when the cost of living in your community is just so high, you can't stay under that threshold that makes up the pie of how much you should be saving, how much you should be spending on insurance, on housing, and things like that. These are some things that are out of our control.
Right, right. And I think you have decently high property taxes in Michigan, and so you got to pay those when you have a house. So all these things have contributed to where we are. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the what has happened from generation to generation. There in beautiful Ann Arbor is the University of Michigan, and they have a nationally known and recognized organization called Panel Study of Economic Dynamics. And in this panel study, they have started from the mid 60s to now and had regular polling of families as far as their income, their wealth, and many other things. But it's a great way to be able to see what has happened to wealth from generation to generation, and it's amazing. It's amazing thing to see.
Yeah.
So
I read somewhere that the likelihood of the generational wealth, once we obtain wealth, of it moving from by the second generation, we typically lose it by the second generation.
Right. And what I'm going to show you here is going to show that this is a animation. That's what it's called. And each one of these dots represents one of those families that were polled in the panel study. Okay. The orange dots are for white people, and the purple dots are for Black people.
Okay. I can't see your screen. Let's get out of here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you not see that?
No. So we got to get out of this screen share.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No problem. Yeah. So this is good. So this is some really good information. So now we're able to see some of the numbers or looking at these pictures or looking at the graphs. They're really going into depth. I was just reading a Brookings Institute report that talked about that even with housing, when it comes to whites versus people of color, that the valuation of housing is so disparaging that it really, that even affects how much wealth we're able to transfer to the next generation when our children inherit our homes and things like that.
Right. Now, can you see the animation now?
Yes, now we can see it.
Okay, great. Well, what this animation does is it takes people who are adults in the early part of the 20 teens, and go back to the late 1980s to their parents and see what were their parents' wealth positions versus what their positions are. So you can see back in the late 80s that the top 20% of all Americans in wealth, 99% were Black, and 1% were white, and 1% were Black.
Yeah.
In the bottom 20%, it's almost 50-50. 56% were white, and 44% are Black. Now, it's gotten better in that now it's 70% white and 30% Black, but the top is still 99% white and 1% Black. So it's been very difficult for us to move up in the amount of wealthy people we have in our group. This middle section that you see here, again, in orange are the white people and the purple are the Black people. You see there's movement up and down, and especially from the lower areas. But one of the things that I want to be able to show you is that it's very difficult to remain in the very top of the wealth position when you're Black, but very easy to stay in the bottom of the wealth position if you're white. And I'm trying to get my graph here to.
Yeah, this looks like it's a pretty good animation or demonstration of what we just talked about, where even if you obtain wealth or amass enough wealth where you're in the top 20% or the next 20%, keeping that wealth through the next 2 or 3 generations just hasn't been one of our strong suits. One of the reasons that we're seeing these purple dots move to the next, the middle 20% and the bottom 20% across generations, there has to be some kind of perpetual something that's happening from one generation to the next, some disconnect that we want to address, and that's where our focus needs to be, especially in this time that we're in.
Right. So what I want to do here. So and you saw that the purple dots that are in the top group, almost all of them fell down in that time. So let me get back to my presentation.
Yeah, this is good because we know what it was yesterday. We know, and you've given us some startling revelation of that it's getting larger. When we thought that we were getting in better positions, but it's the racial wealth gap is getting larger. So we're about 23 minutes into our show, and we don't have a whole lot of time. So we definitely have to find out, not only how do we get here, but for the last few minutes, let's talk about what do we do to close this racial wealth gap? What are some things that whose responsibility is it? What can I do as an individual to make a difference in my community, in my church?
Right. And what I want to tell you, I'm going to just go through this quickly, but there's a lot to learn about this, and you'll be able to see this presentation on the program's webpage, so you can really go through this. But it's clear that, and there's slides that indicate this. It's clear that it's not because we have not had enough education, or we're not making enough money, or because of our family structures or whatever. In all of those cases, if you had a master's degree in anything as a Black person, you're likely to have only about a half to a third of the wealth of a white person that has that. And so I want to make sure that we never should believe that this is our fault, because we're doing all that we can do. But even when we get there, we can't.
It's not my fault. It's not our fault.
It's not our fault. And because of that, we can't close this gap by ourselves. Our white brothers and sisters are listening. You have to look at the way you look at the world to see if there are anything that you're doing or anything you're participating in that is keeping this gap there. And it starts early, as you can see. Even at age 30, there's a major difference in wealth between white and Black families, and of course it becomes even larger as it gets older.
That we're looking at shows that at age 30, the average Black person's income is
the wealth.
Oh, this is wealth. Wow, $13,439 versus the wealth of the white person at $98,139 at age 30. Right.
Yeah, and then it goes up. By age 60, white families have 303,000, whereas Black families only have 39,000 on average. So it doesn't get any better as you get older on that. And the last thing I think that we should talk about is, I think the most important thing that people can do for their families, and that is to be properly insured. The good news is that African Americans really believe insurance much more than the general population, but the problem is that many of us are underinsured. We only have enough for funerals and burials, and we don't have enough to cover the ongoing expenses of our family. This is a relatively easy way to be able to get the wealth that is necessary for succeeding generations by saving in life insurance policies that they will receive the proceeds upon your death.
Yeah, Chuck, that's you're definitely in my area. I am such a proponent of always teaching about the changing our mindset when it comes to the way we look at life insurance. So many of us have, again, we're so underinsured because we look at it just for the final expenses. I've been talking about it and teaching about it for the past couple of months. And and of course, with planning with clients, but what I have found is that most of us look at life insurance as a bill.
Yeah.
We don't look at it as an asset. We don't look at all the features and benefits, the living benefits of building up cash value and having access to that cash value as the policy owner, and then using it, the number that we, making sure that, how do we know whether or not we have enough insurance? It depends on your goal. If you have young children that you need to send to college, you have mortgages that you need to pay off. And now this is the key. There is a desire for the next generation to have a head start. And when I talk to someone, and Chuck, you can tell me how you feel about this. When I talk to someone and they tell me, hey, I had to pull myself up by my bootstraps, or I started off behind, or I had to work hard, they can work hard too. I just shake my head and I just say, wow. That is the mindset. It's not only education, but it's that mindset that we have to change. And here is the financial revelation. The Bible tells us that a good man, God's calling you a good man. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. And it's our responsibility to prepare for the next generation. And the way that we prepare is not only by getting the assets and amassing the assets, but by teaching the next generation how to receive them and what to do with them. My mantra is, as a beneficiary, your role is to receive the inheritances and manage the inheritances, not consume them, but pass them on to the next generation. Have you ever heard someone say that they can work just as hard as I had to work? You ever heard that?
Yeah. And the problem, even statistically, is that it's so much harder today to do whatever you could have done as far as pulling up by your bootstraps 30, 40 years ago. And that's why the racial wealth gap is even wider. We have to jumpstart our way to be able to get closer and closer to the general population's wealth. And life insurance is a great way to do it. I know you've talked about it before, but it's very important.
It's a very strategic tool. And in our last few seconds before we go, speaking of Jumpstart, you had something about savings. I think I saw a slide in there about a savings account.
Yeah. Yeah. In Michigan, the credit unions are part of a group called Save to Win. And you could go to savetowin.org to get all the information. But by owning these particular accounts, you not only get interest on the account, but you actually get entries into a prize that are given out monthly or quarterly. What I tell people is, if you're wasting your money on scratch-offs or some sort of lottery things over time, what you should do is get one of these accounts so that you might still win, but in the meantime, you will always have your money at the other end. It's government guaranteed.
All right, well, Chuck, stay with me because we're still going to be on the Facebook Live. But for our WCHB AM 1340 listening audience, thank you for tuning in to Kingdom Connections, where we're dedicated to bringing you inspiration. We want to inspire you and we want to inform you. Every third Saturday, I'm on here with some financial revelations. Hopefully you got something that blesses your life and encourages you to do something more about managing these resources. Be sure to join us each and every Saturday on WCHB AM 1340 at 5 p.m. Or you can view us on the Facebook Live page on the Mount Pleasant Missionary Baptist Church Facebook page. On behalf of our pastor, James Minnick, and the Mount Pleasant family, we wish you many blessings. And if you don't know the Lord for yourself as your personal Savior, we invite you to join us at the Mount. We have worship service every Sunday, 10 a.m. on Facebook Live. This Sunday, we'll be doing Simply Worship. That's an outdoor service right at the church. You can meet us outside, wear your mask. Physical distancing, we'll be practicing it all. But of course, we just want to come and simply worship the Lord. 10 a.m. at 21150 Moross. That's in Detroit, Michigan, 48236. You can call the church if you want some additional information at 313-884-6648. This has been Reverend Erica with your financial revelations on Kingdom Connections. Blessings to you all. All right, we got that in. So now we can get in just a little bit more because I saw some slides that you had to skip through.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about some of the myths that are out there, and I alluded to it a little bit in my comments. But there are a large number of myths that want to blame us for why there's a racial wealth gap, and Duke University put together this report a couple of years ago on what we get wrong about closing the racial wealth gap, and they actually go through 10 myths that are out there. But I'm only going to talk about a handful of them. Okay. The first one is if we were just as educated as the general society is educated, then we would have the same net worth as the general society. Right. And this chart shows that that's not the case, and I alluded to that before. That someone like me that has a post-college degree has, on average, we will have about $141,000 of wealth, whereas white people with the same degrees have 3 times as much wealth, at about $455,000. In fact, for the people where I stand at, sorry about that, where I stand at $141,000, it's about the same as white people that only have some college education, not even a degree. So, and then when you get down to the people that don't have as much education, the difference is tremendous. Now, there's an $80,000 difference between a black family that doesn't have a high school education and a white family that doesn't have a high school education. Now, just think about it. That can't be because these people have better jobs, or you know, they're hustling more than we are, or whatever. You know, this is mommy's and daddy's money. That's what this really is. This is money that they inherited, or assets that they received, which our parents didn't have. And so that's again,
So here is the case for why this is the case of getting a head start, getting a jump start, and not having a jump start.
right. Exactly. Exactly. And it then persists throughout whatever levels of education that you have.
Yeah.
Another myth is that if we just made the same income as Black people, as white people do, then that would take care of the racial wealth gap. Well, this chart shows that that's not the case. Starting at the top, the people that make more than $122,000 on average, Black families have wealth of about $263,000. That's a nice chunk of change. But white families have double the amount. They have $518,000. And then, you know, let's go back down to the lower end again. The Black families on average have $200 of wealth if they make less than $26,000, whereas white families have $18,000 of wealth. Now, wait a minute. They're making less than $26,000 a year. How are they have wealth of $18,000 versus $200? Well, again, they're getting that wealth from the families.
I mean, it's obvious that you know, money has an intrinsic value of time. Yeah, the
right.
value of money, and being able to pass that money throughout generations gives it the benefit of time. Compounding wealth is going to always be better than starting off behind.
That's correct. Yeah. And you see this also to some extent even in home ownership. There's some people that say if we own homes the same percentage as white people own homes, we would have the same amount of wealth, because for many people their home is one of their wealth, you know, one of the largest assets that they have. Yeah. But it shows that as far as Black homeowners are concerned, the average wealth is about $100,000, whereas it's about $239,000 for whites. Again, almost 2.5 times the wealth. And then you see this difference again on non-homeowners. You know, where are they getting? Why are the whites are so much higher than the Blacks? Well, a lot of it has been given to them, and we have not had the opportunity to receive at the beginning of our financial lives.
Yeah. So these are some startling numbers to look at on the screen. But again, as I said earlier, it's something that we know, we experience it. And as we talk about what these myths are, that, you know, we think that it's because we don't go to school, or, you know, we don't have a good education, or we don't have a good job. But we know that we could have the same job level, job title, maybe even the same level of income with our co-worker here, our white co-worker who's sitting right across from us, and still our net worth will be completely in different ends of the spectrum.
Yes, and the numbers show that there. So once you go through all these myths and show that they're not true, the only the conclusion you come to, the only conclusion you come to is that the racial wealth gap derives mainly from systemic racism and white supremacy. When I created this slide last year, I think that most of my white friends, whatever, would have said, you know, what are you talking about? Hopefully, with the George Floyd situation, there, you know, more and more of them are thinking about this issue. But President Lyndon Johnson, 55 years ago, at a commencement speech at Howard University, which is a Black university for the most part, and said that, you know, if you take a person and hobble them in chains and liberate them and put them at the start of a race, and say, okay, now you're going to race all these people who have been training for this race for years and years,
Yeah.
and you're supposed to get equal, and that's how you're going to get equal. It's just not going to happen. And so, and the last sentence of this is so pungent and emotional for me, to say that we seek not just legal equity, but human ability. Not just equity as a right and a theory, but equity as a fact and equity as a result. And that's the Black Lives Matter group is in the same camp. But here we are 55 years later, and we still have to say these statements in order to get the buy-in of the majority society.
Yeah, I'm currently reading the book White Fragility, and I think it's very interesting in the sense that for so many years the shouts and the claims have been made, and no one was listening. And now we're in a season, we're in a time where not only is everyone listening, but they're asking the question, okay, what can I do? What can I do? And I am so grateful and thankful for this moment, because here we have this platform where we can say, okay, this is what you can do. This is what has to be done. There has to be policy change. There has to be systemic change. There has to be a change of mindset. There has to be a change of practice. There has to be a change of access. Access to, here's the key word, capital. All the things that we have been talking about equate to capital. Access to capital. We're going to make a difference in the generations to come, in the next generations. We have got to have access to capital for our businesses, for our families, for education, because those are the things that are going to make a difference. If we don't do that, then again, we're just talking, we're just doing the rhetoric. But we're in a time where it's not about talk anymore. It's about doing. It's about doing it. And I'm so glad that you took the time to join me today. That was just, I was just so excited when I called you and you said, oh yeah, I'll come on the show. I was just looking for maybe access to some of your slides, I could, but I wouldn't have done them justice the way that you have today.
Well, I'm happy to do it. And again, I hope you're able to post them on your Facebook page, and people could look through them, and I'm be happy to be contacted if anyone wants to have additional information.
All right. So, all right, so we can close this down, and I just want to, before we go, I want to ask you if you want to share a little bit about, you talked to me about the foundations that you, the foundation that you work with. You're an advisor on the board of the Evangelical Lutheran Church, is it?
Yeah, the foundation. Yes.
So this is a broadcast that our church is sponsoring. Our church is making a difference in the lives of people when it comes to not only their access to information, job, financial literacy, tutoring. I mean, we do so much, but one of the things that you're involved in is something that I am so interested in. And so I'd love to hear more about that.
Well, I am involved in the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America's foundation. I'm also a director of the Community Foundation for the Fox Valley region. That's what the Appleton is called, because we have a big river that comes through our area called the Fox River. And one of the things that the Community Foundation has done is, and I would say pretty much on their own, I haven't really had to push it, is when the George Floyd situation happened, they stepped back, and this is 90% white people. There, a few people of color, but this is 9% white people, and they said, they've stepped back and said, wow, maybe because of the way we do our business, we're not helping people of color like we should. And in a community, in a foundation, especially a community foundation, it's they're a very important resource because a lot of nonprofits get funding
Funding, yeah,
from those foundations for all sorts of different things in family welfare, arts, humanities, whatever.
yeah,
And the reality of any organization is that you tend to work more with people you're comfortable with, and it's, as much as you want to try to be, completely blind, that's just not the way the world works.
yeah,
And they figured that out, and so we are in the process. They've asked me to be involved in these discussions, going all the way down to their processes of giving away money. How do they source people to or source organizations to
yeah.
consider? And so it's a really neat thing to be part of. And it's my hope that all across the country that organizations, more and more organizations, will be doing work like this.
Yeah, I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic and I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready for the work. I
Yes.
believe that there is a lot of work to be done.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's going to take individuals like you and myself who have been in the business. I've been in the business 20 years. You've been in the business for over 20 years. And so we have some resources and information that we can bring to the table to say, these are some things that we can put into place so that we can make a difference in our community. And so, Chuck, thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your Friday. I know you had meetings going on, and you stepped away to share this great information. And I know you'll keep building upon it. I look forward to speaking with you again and
Yes.
finding out more about the foundation and the board that you sit on, because those are the kinds of projects or programs that we need to be aware of.
Yeah, and your viewers can also do the same thing. They can, just push a little bit to see what you can have done. But
Yeah.
anyway, thank you, Reverend Erica.
Yeah.
I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, so you promised that we could put the slide, we can post it
Yep.
on our show. We'll post it in the Facebook Live for anyone who wants to view the full presentation. Didn't Chuck do an awesome job? And
Yep.
you've been an awesome audience. And thank you so much for tuning in to Kingdom Connections from the Mount Pleasant Missionary Baptist Church. We work so hard for the Lord because it's all about advancing his kingdom. And the only way to advance his kingdom is to get out there and work. Walking in your calling and doing what God has called you to do. If you have a gift, believe me, it's not for you. It's for others. It's for others. So put it to work. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been Reverend Erica with the Kingdom Connection Show. Join us next Saturday where we'll be talking with Spiritually Enterprising Ministries. Goodbye. Thanks, Chuck.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. See ya.